Hey, thanks for pressing play on this episode of the Brassy Broadcast. I'm your host, Jen Eads. I'm a musician, a student of the creative universe, and a curious girl full of questions. I'm also the HBIC, head broad in charge at the Brassy Broadcasting Company, where I help good people of all kinds create and produce podcasts and other audio content. You can learn more and listen to the entire back catalog of the Brassy Broadcast at brassybroad.com. Just a little warning for this episode that we get passionate talking about radio and podcasting. So if you have little ears around or easily offended coworkers, put your earbuds in or wait till later. But don't forget to come back. You're going to want to hear this one. I've been incredibly fortunate since changing up the podcast a little bit to be able to share with you conversations with some women that have directly impacted my life. They've shared their gifts with me on some level that have inspired me to take action, to create, or to do better work. And these conversations feel like we're just sitting around having coffee and the tape just happens to be rolling. This is one of those conversations. My guest this week is radio producer Amy Gastelum. As a writer and a radio producer, Amy pursues stories that explore the binding tissue of human experience. Her background as a registered nurse informs her work with a hearty blend of empathy and investigative drive. Amy is co-producer of Mother, a podcast. She's lived and worked in Indianapolis, New York City, and Providence. And not only is she a nurse, she's also a graduate of the Transom Story Workshop for radio storytelling. She's reported for PRI's The World, NPR News, Side Effects Public Media, and more. And in addition to all that, Amy started a monthly radio group meeting here in Indianapolis. It's been a wonderful place to workshop ideas, learn skills, and meet some really cool creative people. Enjoy my conversation with Amy Gastelum. Amy, welcome to the Brassy Broadcast.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here with you, Jen.
Now, we know each other through radio group that you started. So we're going to get to that in a minute. But
cool.
So your professional background is in nursing.
That's, professional. What does that mean? My education was in nursing. Yeah. Yes, I earned my Bachelor of Science in Nursing 2008. From Indiana University. And then I went to work as a nurse for a long time. But, you can be more than one thing.
Exactly. So what possessed you to go to the Transom radio storytelling
How
workshop?
much time do we have?
We got as much time as you need.
I tell this story so much because people are very curious for good reason. Like, how do you go from nursing to radio?
Yeah.
And then teaching radio at Indiana University, like, how is that a thing? It's a thing.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that it went like this. So I got my degree in nursing in part because I'm very practical. I love helping people. That's also a thing. But I'm also extremely practical. I didn't come from a family that had a lot of money, and nursing is pretty much a guaranteed middle-class lifestyle. And you can do great things. And I wanted originally to be a midwife. I love working with moms and babies. That didn't work out, but I did end up working with moms and babies in my career as a nurse. I'm still a certified lactation consultant. I'm still a registered nurse. I keep my license up to date and paid for and all of that stuff. And I still identify as a nurse. It's a very important part of my identity. But what happened was I got my nursing degree. I went to work as a nurse, and I supported myself and my husband as he was in medical school. And I loved it, but it just wasn't stimulating a certain part of my brain that I needed stimulated. And I kept trying to. And what I mean by that is it just wasn't very creative. I mean, there are creative components about nursing, like creative problem solving for sure.
Definitely.
Especially as a public health nurse or working at the county hospital. I'm telling you, like with limited resources and this, that, and the other, you have to be a creative problem solver, which I was. But it wasn't the kind of creativity where I was creating something out of the ether.
Yeah.
And I needed to do that and kept trying to figure out how to make that happen in my life. So my husband and I moved to Rhode Island in 2011, I think. 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, 2011, because that was where his first year of his medical residency would be. And then the next 3 years would be in New York. So 1 year in Rhode Island, I'm there. I'm working as an agency nurse. So just kind of contract labor. Mostly it was just like flu vaccine clinics and stuff, like really boring. Like all you're doing, like you're just giving flu shots or like taking cholesterol levels or whatever. I was extremely underemployed and bored and didn't know anyone. And it's New England, right? So like I'm a Midwestern girl, and I learned that when I'm a Midwestern girl who likes to make friends easily.
Right.
And
that's what we do.
That's what we do. We're like, hey, how are you? Da, 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 da. And if you go into New England, like true New England, I'm not talking about New York, but like true New England, like that, people think that you want to steal them from them or like hurt them. I learned this. I tried so hard to make friends there, and it was just like extremely difficult. It was like, if your family didn't come over on the Mayflower with my family, I don't want anything to do with you. You know what I mean? Like it was,
culture shock.
It was culture shock for me. And not to say that people were mean. It was just very, very, compared to the Midwest, very, very closed. And so it was a lonely time for me. Yeah. Yeah. It
makes me sad for you.
It was genuinely sad. Feel it. Because I was really sad. I was like underemployed, couldn't make friends, wrestling with my identity as a creative person, knowing that that my career wasn't fulfilling that part of myself. And so I was taking a writing class. At Brown University had these classes for people who aren't really at the university kind of thing. And we're going to charge them a bunch of money and, and so I took this class and I made one friend in my class. I did. Good. I made a friend. And, we found out that, Ira Glass was speaking. Ira Glass, who started This American Life and all that, was speaking down in Woods Hole, which is on Cape Cod, which was really only an hour's drive from where we were. And so I loved This American Life when I was sitting in my house all by myself, and like cooking and cleaning like crazy, because that was all there was to do. Like I put on This American Life all the time. And so me and my one friend went down to Woods Hole and heard him speak. And it actually ended up, he was speaking at the first graduating class of the Transom Story Workshop, which I didn't realize until I got down there. I didn't even know what it was. And when I was down there, like I learned what the Transom Story Workshop was. And I went back home and I was like, I'm going to apply for that. Like, and I didn't even tell my husband. I didn't tell anyone.
You didn't?
Nope.
Why not?
Because frankly, I didn't want to have the conversation of like the logistics surrounding it and how it was impossible for me to, how could I do that? Like he was an intern, and we had 2 dogs, and it was like, who's going to take the dogs out? Like I knew that it would immediately go to that conversation of like the logistics of it all. Like A, we can't afford it. B, who's going to look after the dogs? C, we only have 1 car. What? And I just didn't want it to get like crushed before it ever had a chance to like grow. And also I never in a million years thought that I would be accepted. So the application was really my way of, I was just putting my toes in the water of like trying to do something for myself that was creative. And just the act alone of applying was enough for me.
Yeah.
I didn't think that I would be accepted. Really didn't.
Wow. Oh, wait. So let's back up though. For anyone listening that does not know what Transom is, can you share that a little bit?
Sure. The Transom Story Workshop is an 8 weeks intensive radio storytelling workshop that's in it's on Cape Cod in a little town called Woods Hole. And you live with and work with 8 people that are in this tiny workshop. That's what it was at the time. They may have changed it, but you live down there, you eat, sleep, drink, poop, radio. Like, I mean, I did a lot of shitting radio, but and it's just an extremely intensive time. You learn a ton of stuff, in a really condensed time. And it's led by Rob Rosenthal, who is amazing and used to be with the Salt Institute for Documentary Studies, and then went down to Transom and started a radio program there. And he's incredible. He has an amazing podcast that I recommend for anybody who wants to do radio. It's called How Sound. So check it out. He interviews people who do amazing radio storytelling stuff, and he asks them what their process is. And of course, it's like mixed beautifully and great to listen to. And so he's the leader of that. And
I'll have a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, check it out, because they accept applications for fall and spring workshops, and they also do like week-long workshops over the summer that are traveling. So
cool.
They come to different towns across the US for that. So that's very, very cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So I applied and I got in, which was the shocking part. And I was like, I actually told my husband that I had applied for it like a week before I found out that I got in. Like it came out of me.
What did he say?
He was like, why didn't you tell me? And I was like, told him why. And he was like, so then of course, like he couldn't do the whole like logistics conversation because I told him why I didn't tell him. So then like that got skipped.
Yeah.
And he immediately went into like, well, you're going to get it. And I was like, no, and that's not even the point, And he was like, well, I just know that you will. And I was like, whatever. And then I got the email from them, and he was like, let me read it to you. Like I couldn't even open it, So he opened it and like read it to me. And I thought he was lying. Like I thought he was like making a joke, like you got accepted. And then, which would be cruel.
Yeah.
He wouldn't do that. But anyway, so he was happy. He was proud of me and happy for me. And we went from there. And then I took the only car that we had, and I left the dog for 8 weeks. I was like, bye. He still likes to bring that up. He's like, remember when?
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I remember that.
So what was that 8 weeks like?
Oh, man. Challenging, really, really challenging, because I was coming from a background there was a right way to do everything.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
science.
or people die.
Freaking science. Yeah. It's evidence-based practice. This is how you do it. There's plenty of literature to support what you do and what you don't do. You know what I mean? And this was totally different because it was asking me to be creative and for like the answers to come from inside of my own brain, which is something that I was craving and I wanted, but I just didn't actually have much practice with.
Did you trust the answers in your brain?
No,
or were
not
you
at all.
Okay. Yeah.
Not at all. And my first story really screwed me up. Like we do 2 stories at Transom at the time. I don't know if they've changed it, but at the time you do 2 stories. One is a creative life story. It's supposed to be about somebody who's doing something creative on the Cape, and you kind of profile them. And the second one is kind of a story of your own choosing. And the first one, it really screwed me up because it was a story about someone who was re-entering drag contests after like 10 years of being out of doing these contests. And the reason why he quit doing them was because he said that he kind of lost his identity in his drag persona back in the day when he was doing drag when he was younger. But as he aged and matured, he was ready to do it again and knew better boundaries about the difference between his drag persona and his what he called his boy self.
Yeah.
So it was actually like I thought I was just going to be doing a story about somebody who like lived their creative life through drag. And it turned out to be this whole story about identity and like boundaries and maturity, and like I was in over my head. I mean, I felt really, really, really responsible for telling his story. I felt the weight of it was extremely heavy. And I would get, some feedback from my peers who were, I think they didn't have as good a grasp on the story as me because I was the one reporting it and producing it. And so they would encourage me to do things like that were kind of, more funny or playful and that kind of thing. And I was like, this isn't funny. This isn't playful. This isn't a playful story. And I didn't want to characterize him that way. Like, and I wanted to be very respectful of him and his process. And I was burdened with the responsibility of what it means to produce a story about someone else's life. Yeah. It felt really, really heavy. So I'll never forget, like I was if you've ever, worked in radio, you make a script, if you're doing storytelling, that's like your narration and the quotes and all that kind of thing. And then if you're working with your editor, what you do is you like cut the tape for the quotes that you're going to use and that kind of stuff. And you do what's called a read through before you mix the whole thing together, where you read your narration and play the tape. So we were doing this for Jay Allison, who also helped create the Transom Story Workshop, more from a production standpoint. And he's a big name in radio. Like he's been producing radio since the 70s, and he's just like the man,
So were you nervous about that anyway?
Yeah, of course. Everyone was. Like Jay is like a very intimidating, he can be an intimidating presence. He's just very confident and knows what he's doing. And, when you're in a room with someone who's confident and knows what they're doing and you feel like you don't have those things, it can be intimidating. Sure. He's lovely, a lovely man though. But, so I'm like, I'm feeling this burden of like, am I representing this man the way that he would represent himself? You know what I mean? And is it fair how I'm doing it? And there's just a lot of components at play. And I don't like my script at all. I hate it.
Why?
Because I didn't feel like I was doing him justice. Like I didn't feel like the story was living out the vision that I sort of had in the back of my mind about what the real crux of the story was. My script wasn't reflecting that. And I was very frustrated with that. So I was, it's actually quite funny. Like, but it was so just weird and dramatic at the time. I'm like reading my narration and playing the tape. And the story as it was at the time was like, I'm describing the actual drag show because I went to it, the competition. And I'm like, it's something silly. Like when Steph Adkins steps on stage as Barbie Q, right? Like it's so silly.
A great name.
I know. And it's like he's wearing a striped pencil skirt and, flings a jacket off and, just describing everything that he's wearing and stuff. And it was kind of just goofy. But it wasn't getting at the heart of the story at all, And I'm like reading this and playing the tape and I just start crying.
Oh no.
Yeah, like sobbing. So I'm reading the script that's like, and then he rips off the skirt to reveal short shorts. Like I can't get through the script. I'm crying so hard. And everyone's looking at me like, oh, like, really? And Jay's lovely. I mean, he's like very gracious and he's like, it's okay, take your time, and everything. And I'm just like so frustrated with the fact that I cannot get this man's story right that I sobbed for the entire rest of everyone else's read-throughs. Like I had tissues and like deep soul achy sobbing because I was like, I've failed Steph and his story, which was so heavy. And like, maybe I can't do this. You know what I mean? Which I've been thinking the whole time anyway.
Right.
Maybe I can't do this, So it was an emotional time, but I came out alive and I came out with 2 stories that, I'm proud of. The second one was much easier because I'd been through the hell.
So did you go back and change any of the narration stuff in the first one then? Like, did you get to a point where you're like, okay, this isn't the worst thing ever, or were you just like not happy?
Yeah. So Jen, it was mostly like I just gave up because time was an issue. Like a deadline is a deadline. Right. And like I don't ever listen to that story because it just wasn't what I had wanted it to be. But there were things I was able to fix that made it more what I wanted it to be, but I still wasn't totally 100% happy with it by the end of it. But I learned that that's very common. And like, that's just a thing. That's just part of it a lot of the time. And I did get, the heart of the story did come through. I went back. He lost the competition, and I went back to his house after the competition, and we talked about, identity and like, is it going to be different this time? That you're embarking on this creative pursuit again,
Yeah.
And so it did kind of get there, and it actually got picked up because I put it on PRX, the Public Radio Exchange, and it got picked up by some small radio station in New Hampshire or something, but somebody liked it, but not me. And of course it got played on the Cape and Islands station down there in Woods Hole, which was kind of the agreement with the whole Transom thing anyway. But so it was all right. And then my second story, I was much, much happier with, but I knew to trust myself. And I did not trust myself at all with the first story.
Do you think if you'd done the second story first, you would have been more confident doing or you think it just had to happen?
I had to go
way?
through that. Like, I had to get in the belly of the beast, which was trust yourself creatively. Because I kept looking for like, how is this supposed to be done?
Right.
How is this supposed to be done? Like, give me what should this look like when I'm mixing it? What should it sound like when I'm mixing it? And there was no like correct answer. And that was like really unnerving. I was like, wait, what? Like, my opinion counts here? What are you talking about? Like, my taste counts here? Like, I don't understand. And so for the second story, what I ended up doing was like, the pendulum swung completely the other direction. And I didn't really ask for input from like any of my peers, hardly at all. Like, the pendulum completely swung the other way. And I just like kind of shut down and went inside of myself. And like, the story came only from myself, which is also not good. Do you know what I mean? Like, it really needs to be like kind of somewhere in the middle. But at that time, I was working that out, like how that had to happen. So, so the second story really came more from me and my opinion and my taste and all of that. And I was like learning to trust myself. And, both of them suffered for the pendulum swings, but I felt more prepared to move forward after experiencing both of those things, both of those stories,
Yeah. That's
that was a
rough.
long ass answer.
I like it. I like it. I like your long ass answer.
Okay, great.
All good.
Carry on.
Oh God. How do I
you asked.
Follow. Good God.
I mean, you asked.
I did ask. Man.
Yeah, that was a lot. So I've gotten better at it though. Like, a balance of trusting myself and then like seeking out edits.
Yeah.
For sure.
So what's that editing process look like for you? Because I know for me sometimes, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, like, it's hard to go, number one, it's hard to go ask for feedback, I think. Sometimes it is for me. And then to like not take that feedback personally.
Oh, yeah.
How do you manage?
Well, the person that I work with most for all of my stuff, let me back up and just say that in nursing school and in nursing in general, you get a lot of feedback.
Yeah.
So I had gotten accustomed to, through school and my job as a nurse in a county hospital. Like, in school, I remember teachers just criticizing every little thing and constantly giving you feedback on, techniques and this, that, and the other. And you just have to know that they're trying to make you better. Yeah. And it's not personal at all. And so I did get better at that. I mean, that was hard to eat for that career, part of my career. But, you learn to eat it. And then working at the county hospital, I had a nurse. This is my first job. I'm working on an antenatal unit. And I had a nurse I worked with who she told me at the beginning of the day, she would say like, all right, you have 10 coins today, 10 coins. And each coin, this is not real coins, but like fake coins. Each coin was worth one question that I could ask her because I was so new and annoying.
Oh, God.
So she was like, you have 10, I think she might have said tokens.
Yeah.
10 tokens. So I would like hoard my tokens, which was my questions, which was like everything from like, how do I do this thing to like, where does this paper need to go as I'm transferring this client to CT scan and that kind of thing, you know? And so I'd be like, Esther, I need to redeem a token. And, you know, like, and so like, it was just like, I was used to people kind of, you know, and then being very blunt about what is and isn't okay and that kind of thing. So I did have a little experience with like feedback, you know what I mean? Like in really serious situations too, you know, like when you're doing like, when you're doing, you know, like insulin drips and stuff like that can kill people, you know? So, you know, you get a thick skin when you're working in serious situations like that. And people are much more like straightforward and to the point in a healthcare setting. So there was that.
Right.
And then the person that I work with most that I get feedback from is Ann Sani, who is my co-producer for the podcast that I make, which is called Mother. And she's like, you know, super cool journalist. She works at WNYC and she has like a graduate degree from NYU in journalism. So like, I mean, she's like the real deal. And she's super smart. And she's also just like lovely and kind. And she's also extremely straightforward. Like she gives you notes and there it's just, here's what it is. Yeah. Like this part. And when we first started working together, it was like, I would get her notes and then I would have to, sometimes I would cry because I'm so in love. You're so in love with your story. Right. That you're like, no, you don't get it, you know? And then I would sleep on it. I don't change anything when I first get like the notes. I like to sleep on it and then go back to it and kind of consider, you know, again, the list of things that I need to change. And it's much less painful now. Like Anne and I, but I also really trust her. And the cool thing about Anne and working with her for the last 2 years is that one thing that we do is like we say, okay, here's my notes. And we always say this, even though it's been 2 years, like these are just a suggestion. You do not have to do what I think would help with your story. So somehow like disarming the notes like that, like still giving you the autonomy to disregard them because this is your project and I support you, whatever you choose to do it helps me absorb them, you know, frankly. And it's less pushy, you know what I mean? So it's like, okay, well, I don't have to take this. It's just a suggestion, you know? So we both do that for each other. And then we both acquiesce to, you know, each other's like original ideas and that kind of thing. But I take her notes and like these days I would say 97% of her notes because she understands me and my style and my goals and that kind of thing. And she's respectful of that and vice versa, you know? Yeah. And I trust her because I've taken notes before that she's given me and they were really good. And it turned out like it just makes your work better. And I'm like, oh God, thank you for that. Thank you for saving me. Like I'll send her things and just be like, help me. You know what I mean? And she'll be like, all right, here's what you need to do. And I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. So it's much easier to accept her notes in part because I know she knows me. And so I trust her instincts and I trust that she respects me and that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see that though, that'd be hard to build that trust.
It took a while, but we also talk a lot. Yeah. And so we'll talk through the notes. Like if there's something I have an issue with, I can be really, really frank with her because I know her and I trust her and I know that we both have really similar goals for what we're trying to do with the podcast. So I'll get her notes and I'll be, if there's one that I don't agree with, we'll talk it through and both, you know, be like, well, this is what I was trying to do with it. Yeah. And she'll like, oh, okay, I get what you're trying to do with it. I still think da-da-da-da-da. Or she'll say, oh, okay. All right. And we don't always come to a consensus about it, but the kind of unspoken rule is if it's your project, if it's your story that you've been spending all your time on and whatever, like it's your call in the end. Like I disagree, but it's your call. And we've done that. And it's funny, like a while ago, she had done a story where the audio, it was all phone tape, but it was a great interview. But it was all phone tape because that's all we could get. And we had no resources. We still don't. Yeah. But it didn't sound that good. And so to try to fix it, she was like, I'm just going to run this music under it. And I was like, I don't think that's a good idea because it just sounds more busy and confusing and it just doesn't mean anything to have the music there or whatever. But she wanted to do it. And so I was like, all right, it's your call. It's your piece. Yeah. So she did end up doing it. And then like months later, or maybe a year later, she was like, I should have totally taken your note on that. And I just like laugh because it's not that important. But that kind of stuff. I mean, and it's happened to me too, the exact same way. I used this song at the end of one that I was like, I think this is a really good song. And then she was like, it's way too moody. Like it's over the top. But I was like feeling my piece, like I was deep in it. And she was like, it's just too much, Amy. It's over the top. And then I did it. And then I was like, oh my God. Yeah. You were right. But it's what's done is done, Yeah. So, but we've come a long way.
So what's your workflow like then? Because you're in Indiana, she's in New York.
Right.
So how do you guys manage that?
Well, originally when we started our podcast, Mother, she would come over to my house, like, I think like a couple times a week on her way to work. So, she would take the train, get off at my stop and, come over because I had a little baby and we started. So when we started, I quit my job as a nurse because I had my daughter and I was in New York with no family support or anything like that. So I was like, I'm just going to stay home with her for a while. And we had a mutual friend and Anne found out that I wanted to start doing more radio since I had the baby because our mutual friend told her. And so my baby's like 2 weeks old. And Anne has no kids at this point, right? And she's like 2 weeks old and Anne comes over and she's like, hey, I heard you want to start doing more radio. You want to do a project together? And I'm like, I am a 2-week-old baby. Like, but I didn't say that, but I was thinking it. I was like, wow, this is funny. Like, you don't know anything about what it means to have a 2-week-old baby, do you? But I did want to do more creative stuff. So I was like, yes, And so she was super gracious. She was awesome. She came and visited me like all the time, like once or twice a week in the morning. And I'd put Bobby down to take a nap or whatever. And then we'd voice it then and there. Well, then I moved away. And so that was easy. I mean, not easy, but it was like way easier than it is now, which is I live in Indiana. She lives in New York. And then she had a baby like a few months ago. So now she's like, she'll tell me like, I cannot believe I came to you and asked you to do like an additional thing on top of having this baby. And I'm like, it's cool. It's cool. So she had a baby and she's just recently returned back to work. And so it's really hard because both of us have little kids and we both work. Yeah. And so how do you find the time to voice? And she lives in a tiny apartment and can't get quiet space. I mean, it's really, really hard to get quiet space when you live in a little New York City apartment and you have a baby in there with you.
Oh my God.
Like that's actually a huge challenge for us. Yeah. And so sometimes you hear baby Dave in the background. Like that's just, it is what it is, Yeah. So, or the dishes getting put away or whatever, because it's a tiny New York apartment. That's life. But so I'll go maybe in my car or my shed or sometimes in a closet or whatever. And we'll be on the phone. That's how we do it. Like really? I put earbuds in, like one earbud in. Yeah. And then on one side. And then the other earbud, I have to tuck under my over the ear headphones so that you don't pick up the sound of it. Right. You know what I mean? And so I record myself with my microphone. She records herself with her microphone. She's doing the same thing. One earbud for the phone in one ear and the headphones over both ears. Yeah. And then we talk in the microphones and it works out all right. Like it's okay. Sometimes our room tone is just a little bit different, but if we put like the room tone on 2 tracks.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it kind of sounds like we're in the same space together. So like we do our best, but very
cool.
limited resources and trying to make it happen.
I love it though. I mean, like you're not using it as an excuse, you know? It's just like,
yeah,
here
you mean the
go.
babies? Yeah. Is that what you mean?
Well, no, just anything. I mean, any challenge that, oh, I can't get a quiet space or oh, I just had a baby.
Yeah.
Like there's no, you know.
I mean, it is an excuse actually a lot of the times because it's like a legitimate excuse. It's like, I can't do this. And so in fact, we just got off the phone talking about like, when is the best time to voice? Because we get interrupted a lot, you know, by our families and stuff. And so we decided that the best time to voice is the first Saturday of the month at 6:00 in the morning.
Really?
That's when we can make it happen. That's when we can both make it happen.
Why then?
That's real because her baby goes back to sleep. He takes like a morning nap, and 6:00 in the morning, the sirens and everything in Queens, New York, aren't out. There's no traffic. There's not as much traffic. It's just quieter in her space.
Yeah,
and like my child is still sleeping, and so it's just easy. 6:00 in the morning on the first Saturday of the month is like what we've had to like work out. It's ridiculous, but
you're getting it done.
That's what it is. Trying to. And then she'll call me, like she has a long commute in the morning on the way from Queens into Manhattan. So we will work out what we're going to do and plan out what we're going to do on that walk to work.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Nice.
So we try to make it happen like where we can and when we can. And it's a crunch. It's hard. And we also give each other like permission for there to be like a hiatus. We do not, we have been asked to like join podcast networks and we've said no because they want a monthly episode. And we're like, we're not, if we this is a passion project.
Yeah.
If we do something that compromises the passion in the passion project, which is like to put too much stress on it, if we can't get it done, then that undermines the only thing we have going for us with this project because we're not making any money.
Yeah.
So like we need to protect the passion before anything else.
That's super smart.
Well, I would love to take credit for that, but I actually heard like Caitlin Prest say that at a Women in Podcasting event. So she makes The Heart. Back then it was Audio Smut, but Caitlin Prest mentioned that. And I was like, it resonated with me.
Well, because I mean, a lot of people that I know doing podcasts, there's no money. They are doing it because like they just have to. It's one of the reasons I'm doing it. And speaking of passion projects, let's talk about Radio Group.
Okay.
Because I'm so excited that you have started that here in Indianapolis. Cool. So how did all that come about?
In New York, when I was in New York, there's a robust radio community and it's great. And I learned a ton of stuff from people there. I loved it. But, so when I moved back to Indianapolis, I was like looking around for people in radio. There was not really a community that I knew of anyway. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, well, let's try to start one. And there's like, a few people here like doing storytelling and radio storytelling and that kind of thing. So, just kind of casually wanted to start something up. And I don't know, like I really don't want the group to be about me. Like I've been working so hard to like make people join the listserv and like, hey, you want to write a little note to the listserv from someone who's not me. Oh my
God, Amy loves her listserv. To
like make it not about me. I'm like, hello, because I don't want to be like the leader of the radio group. I really don't. I want it to be, like a group effort.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question. But
I think it's coming. I think it just takes a while to get traction.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, in the radio group.
But like cool things have happened since you started the radio group.
Yeah. Cool things have happened. Cool people have been making really cool work. You know what I mean? I think the biggest thing about the radio group is just like, just creating a space where people can talk about their creative endeavors. And sometimes that takes like a lot of time for those things to actually come to fruition. Like being a nurse and having worked with, like, the last thing I did as a nurse was I worked with low-income first-time moms. And so it was a relationship-based program that lasted from throughout the pregnancy until the child was 2 years old. And so I was trained in that program to do like motivational interviewing and all of these things. That's like, how do you get someone motivated to do something that it comes from inside of them instead of you telling them what to do?
Yeah.
Because that's a real big problem in medicine, is like the paternalistic approach that a lot of people in medicine take. Like, I'm here to save you. Like, no, I'm here to support you. I'm here to provide you with some information and some tools. And then I would also like to support you as you go on this journey of trying to like make your life what you want it to be. And that's so unique to every single person. And so I learned that in nursing, and then it's completely applicable to everything else I ever do that has a touch of leadership in it,
Right, yeah.
So whether I'm teaching my students at IU or like working with the radio group, like, I know that all I can do, right, is help connect resources. And also, if somebody wants to talk about like, here's what I'm going through in my creative process or whatever, just like have a space where people feel comfortable talking it through and being at that stage. The levels of readiness for change, that's also a medical thing. You have pre-contemplation, contemplation. What are they? Pre-contemplation, contemplation, like action and reflection or something like that, I think. But I learned that in medicine, that it's like, you got to take in nursing, actually, you have to take your time with people. People aren't going to be ready to like jump on stuff, anything new for a while. That's a thing. So, so taking it slow, taking it easy, taking it one step at a time, and not having people in the group feel like overwhelmed by, us moving too fast and that kind of thing is important. And I do think it should also be relationship based. I think if we trust each other and we respect each other in the group and we build that, then when it comes time to do things like a critique, it's more meaningful.
Oh, completely.
Yeah. It just works better.
I love Radio Group.
You do?
I do.
What do you love about Radio Group?
I like having that like once a month of, I've met really cool people through it, which is like probably the best thing. But like the tape sync workshop that you did last week, I was like, I don't know how to do that, but that sounds really cool. And I could get paid for that. So it's like, it's exposed me to new ideas and new ways that like, I can why not? Why wouldn't I go do that? If I've got the stuff to go do it and the skills, it's dumb for me not to. So, and I think opening me up to some additional resources and and good conversation and good people that I feel have a similar mission. We all want to work on our craft. And, I haven't even attempted the storytelling thing yet through podcasting, but I'm like, but I can do that because I have these resources and they're like in my backyard and people are working through the same stuff.
Right.
So I'm not going to feel dumb if I ask a question, which I think having just kind of that safe space so that you don't feel dumb.
Right.
Is a huge, huge thing. So,
Yeah. That's great. I mean, that's the point, it's just like having a safe space to like ask questions and be unsure and, live in ambiguity for a while and then get used to living in ambiguity because that's freaking a creative life for you is like just getting comfortable with like living in ambiguity. But yeah. And then another part of Radio Group here in Indy that I've tried to be intentional about, and I think other members of the group are kind of intentional about too, is like understanding and recognizing that public media in general, but also including and not limited to public media, has issues with representation. I mean, we fail all the time on that. So I'm trying to be really aware of that and recognize what the barriers are to representation in even independent media, frankly, are, and how we as the radio group can help to not contribute to that further. So, for example, like, I remember being in the New York radio group, and I love the New York radio group. I do so much. But I remember being at one woman's house where the radio group was always held at someone's apartment. It's hard to get space in New York to do anything, frankly. And it was good that we rotated to different people's houses and got to meet different people and stuff. But there were issues with that. You know, not everybody feels comfortable hosting in their house, and so then it limits, you know, who's going to host. And so there's kind of like a power dynamic there to who feels comfortable hosting. And I remember being at this woman's house, and we were doing some kind of workshopping. We were listening to a piece, and this man in the back of the room, there must have been 30, 40 people in this tiny apartment. Oh yeah. It was like a really robust group. And this man at the back of the room, and this group was not a very racially diverse group, or with age or class. Like, it was pretty much all the same. And this man at the back of the room was talking about something that he made, and he was like, well, you know, like, I want to do this thing, but I don't want it to sound like a single mom in the Bronx made it.
Nice.
And I was like, what? Like, I was like, it's there's so much there. Like
from a quality standpoint, or from what standpoint did he not?
Jen, you'd have to ask him, because I did not clarify. I was like shocked and ashamed that I didn't say anything at the time. I mean, to the people who were sitting around me, we all looked at each other like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
But, you know, I was already known for like causing trouble, like, you know, causing a hubbub in public spaces. And so, like, I like to give other people the opportunity to do it. And it doesn't always happen that way. But, you know, the fact that he felt comfortable saying that in that space is a problem with the entire space, not just him.
Right.
So I think I try to keep that in mind when we're, you know, making plans for the radio group and things like that. Like, how do we not make this a space where somebody feels comfortable doing that?
Right.
You know what I mean? And so one of the things we do is, like, you know, we meet in a place that is like accessible to everyone. You can bring your kids. I mean, because some people have kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That they can't leave at home by themselves because it's illegal. You know what I mean? Not because they're trying to be progressive, but because it's fucking illegal.
Yeah.
So, you know, just trying to be just really aware of what actual barriers are to getting people making great work in radio. And so it has to do with where you meet. It has to do with how you promote the club and the group. And it has to do with how you run the group.
Yeah. And I know we're not meeting at the Burger King anymore.
Well, we got harassed at the Burger King. So no, we're not. Yeah.
That was weird.
That was really weird.
Because women with microphones are scary.
Yeah. Well, you should explain what happened.
So we're sitting around at the Burger King.
On East 10th Street, 10th and Jefferson, East Side, Indianapolis.
And there were what? 4 of us, maybe?
4 or 5.
Yeah.
With a child.
Yeah.
And we had ordered food.
Yeah.
Or drinks, at least.
Yeah. And, you know, it's not like a radio group is rowdy.
No.
And then they had like a rent-a security guy.
So what happened was, tell the narrative, Jen. Let's work on your storytelling.
Let's work on it
now.
Okay.
So what had happened was.
So we're sitting there. You pulled out your microphone and your recorder.
Actually, Alicia was holding it.
Oh, Alicia. Okay. Alicia was holding the recorder. And we were going to learn like how to use your fancy shotgun microphone and the recorder. Is that when he came over?
Yeah. Pretty much right there. Well, Alicia pulled out. So Alicia she borrowed a recorder that I had and was going to show T how to use it. Remember?
Yeah.
And Alicia's sitting there, and I don't think it's insignificant to say that that day she was wearing a shirt that says "Black by popular demand." Love that shirt. I don't think it's insignificant to mention that.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she pulls it out, and she was getting ready to show T how to use it, and then the security guard, who to me, I thought he was an officer. I thought he was a police officer because what do I know? Like the difference between their
I did
outfits.
too. I just thought he was like on break or something. And he was sitting there working at the table or whatever. Yeah. And
he came over and he was like, you cannot gather in a meeting here, and you definitely can't record anything. And I was like, since when? Like,
since when can you not gather at the Burger King?
I'm so confused. Like, I was like, what the hell are you talking about? And it was really unnerving. And, Alicia immediately was like, that man is not IMPD. And I was like, are you sure? And she was like, no. He wishes he was IMPD, but he's not. And I was like, well, let's not fuck with him. Like, it's, late at night. It's not late at night, but it's dark. Right. And it's, East 10th Street, and this man thinks he's the fucking police. So let's go. So we left. And then the next morning, I went in and talked to the manager, and I was like, there was an officer here. And he was like, oh, no. We hired him. And I was like, okay, so the security guard that you hired harassed us last night, and we will never be coming here again. Just so you know. Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty bad. Pretty horrible.
Yeah. Like, it was just, I've never experienced that in my sheltered Midwestern life. Mm-hmm. Kind of weird.
Yeah, it was weird.
So we moved our meeting.
We went to the cooperatively owned grocery store down the street, and that was fine.
Way better.
Way better. Way better.
Yeah.
But
and that's the rowdiness of Radio Group.
The rowdy ass Radio Group. Yeah, right.
So Amy, what's up next for you for projects? What are you working on? What's got you excited
right now? Okay. So I always have things in the works, right? That's like, God, if I had $1,000, this is all the things that I would do. This summer, I'm going to try to do a podcast boot camp for Indiana Youth Group, which is a youth organization for LGBTQIA youth in the Indianapolis area, working with Michelle Jordan, who runs Melanation, which is a group that meets to discuss the lived experience of being queer and Black in Indianapolis. Anyway, she works with IYG, and so together we're hoping to put on a podcast boot camp. So that's going to be fun. And then I'm going to continue teaching audio storytelling at IU in Bloomington. Then also, I'm looking at a few different stories. I would like to do this story about the reintroduction of bison to Indiana after 200 years. I know. It's like, what? Like
is that's a thing?
That's a thing. They just did it. Up
Where?
At Kankakee Sands in northern Indiana. So it's kind of cool. The Nature Conservancy is doing it. So I love the American bison. Like, it's my favorite animal. Yeah. And I'm like, let me go do a story. I'm really interested in that.
Oh my God, that's
they're
so
having
exciting.
babies this spring. So I'm trying to make that story somehow work for the podcast. But so definitely continuing on the podcast. We're working on an episode that we have literally been working on for 2 years, off and on, about Margaret Crane, who designed the first at-home pregnancy test. I'm telling you, we've been working on this for so long. I'm over it, but it's at the stage where it just needs to be mixed and scored, and we're going to be ready to put it out. So there's that, and then I've always got my feelers out for just like, stories that are interesting to me and different places that I'd like to pitch.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of like, can I actually get that done in my life? Right. I don't know. And then also, just like hanging out with my kid. Like, she's 3, I'm not having any more, and she's fun,
That's
so
cool.
I want to have fun with her. So trying to balance all of that is a trip.
Well, thanks for coming by today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm looking forward to your next visit. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, I'm over anytime.
All right.
It's fun.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I had some big takeaways. Here are my top 3. Number 1, don't take the passion out of your passion project. Give yourself permission to take a break when you need it. Number 2, go for the things you want in life and then figure out the logistics. We spend way too much time telling ourselves why things can't happen. Sometimes logistics are just excuses. And number 3, sleep on the feedback. Let it marinate overnight and revisit it the next day with a clear head before you make any decisions. Let me know what your big takeaways were from this conversation and how you're broadcasting your voice this week. You can tweet me at BrassyBroadJen or send me an email at jen@brassybroad.com. I love hearing from you. Now get out in the world and do some good.